What's up, everybody? This is BR here, and today I want to talk about how Overwatch being labeled as a competitive shooter is just a little bit of a misnomer, and how that label is going to decline over time, especially with Overwatch's new direction and future ahead of it. And honestly, having that kind of title to the game has actually been hurting it, and why I think Blizzard just wants to walk away from it, not, immediately of course, but gradually over time. And how the deeper we go into Overwatch 2's life cycle, and eventually, with Overwatch 2's promised co-op campaign, we're gonna see it shake off that competitive shooter title, not immediately of course, but gradually. And let me explain. So personally, in my honest opinion, Overwatch as a casual game, as something that you just pick up and play, is pretty flawless, honestly. Like, forget about the content that Overwatch 2 has and what it lacks. Forget about its life cycle before. If you're somebody who just learned about the game right now and you just decided to install it without looking at any kind of old gameplay or any kind of reviews about it, any kind of opinions about it. It's a free-to-play game, you download it and you finally play it. Well, what are you gonna get? You're actually gonna get a pretty good game. Relative to other free-to-play shooters out there, Overwatch is pretty good, honestly. It doesn't actually restrict anything that you need to play the game with behind any kind of paywall, and you get a bunch of other extra features. And I do think that Overwatch is kind of flawless if you don't take any competitive aspect into it. If you just treat it as a normal game that receives content updates and other types of... and you just focus on the casual nature of it, and I'm talking about, quick play and the arcade, it's not a terrible time. Dare I say, it's actually really good. And it competes with every other free-to-play shooter out there. And if you're the kind of person who just plays casually, who just plays Overwatch 2, like a game, just nothing competitive about it, and you love the game and you don't think that there's any fault with that, then yeah, I believe you. And of course, I think that you're absolutely right. Hell, when I play quick play Overwatch, it really is a good time. I don't think I've ever had a time where after playing quick play, I just feel done. I just feel like I don't want to play this fucking game anymore. I get to experiment with whatever I want to do, and I get to play maps that I otherwise would hate in a competitive sense. I'm a lot more lenient. I think that Overwatch 2 as a casual game is fucking phenomenal. I'm sorry if you don't think so. Or if you've never played Overwatch before, or have never touched a first-person shooter, I would actually highly recommend Overwatch. As a pick-up-and-play casual game, it's really, really, really fun. I can't deny it. And in these recent months, Overwatch has become that game that I highly recommend to anybody who is new to PC gaming. For example, recently I actually helped my neighbor build his first PC, and there was a couple games that I highly recommended. First off, Team Fortress 2, of course, the king of casual class-based shooters, and Overwatch because A, it's a free-to-play game, and B, it has a lot to offer as a casual game. I mean, it has something that anybody with a new piece of hardware would want to play. It's a first-person shooter, it has good graphics, and of course, it's free. Last thing you want to do after buying a PC is spending money on a game to play on it. Now, I know that a lot of people are going to disagree with me here because of the microtransactions and all that stuff. But again, as a casual game and as someone who is just starting to play the game, it doesn't really restrict you in any way that would require you to pay money for it. Sure, skins were nice to have for free back when Overwatch was a paid game, but you don't need it to play the game. And besides, this conversation isn't about the ethics of Blizzard. It's just purely about the game and how it is to the player base. So any arguments regarding microtransactions are kind of null because, again, you don't need the microtransactions in order to play the game. The game is fun on its own. Nothing is locked behind a paywall except for some PNGs, alright? And this is very much a lot different than other games that I play, but I don't like to recommend to people. Primarily Apex Legends. I fucking love Apex Legends. I love playing it. It's a good competitive shooter. But I would say that it is not a pick up and play kind of game. I got a buddy of mine who doesn't like to play Apex, even casually. And that's because he thinks that ranked play and casual play are exactly the same. And honestly, I kinda don't blame him. And at the same time, I don't blame Apex because that's just how the game is. The game is, by nature, highly competitive since you're playing a battle royale. That's just how it is. You're supposed to be the last team standing, and unfortunately, that means being hyper-competitive at all fronts. And for that reason, I think that Blizzard's approach to changing Overwatch into what Overwatch 2 is now, being a lot more favorable as a free-to-play game led to Overwatch's revival in the gamer space. No longer this dying game, but one that has a legitimate future. Of course, we're still waiting for PvE, but at the moment, everything's okay for the majority of the player base, at the bare minimum. But you know who's not having so much fun? The competitive space. Overwatch 2 has had some of the worst reactions to competitive balancing that I've ever seen from people in Overwatch. Every half season, there's a new meta that is just making people cringe. It's just making people feel terrible playing the game. And depending on your skill range, depending on your rank, depending where you stand in the MMR line, competitive Overwatch is very different. So many people who are suggesting changes to Overwatch don't see eye to eye. And that just leads to more frustrations because some people get what they want and others don't. Obviously, people who like a character are going to want them to be as powerful as they can, while those who want them to be nerfed to the ground. And while Blizzard has made a little bit of improvement on the amount of time that it takes for them to push out an update, just, a little, I personally think that Blizzard is honestly only going to continue keeping this up until PvE comes out. Because the competitive community of Overwatch is just a remnants of Overwatch 1. And I think that the competitive part of Overwatch is kind of like a legacy component of software. And yeah, sure, Blizzard is going to continue supporting it, well into the future, at least because of demand, but eventually it's going to be seen as non-profitable or at least non-essential. And eventually, just like any legacy component in any software, it's going to lose support. Maybe not immediately, probably gradually. If they do it immediately, I'm sure there would be a shitstorm. But, gradually enough that people don't notice, and the only people who do notice are such a small minority that nobody cares anymore. Similar to that story of frog in boiling water. The one where if you put a frog in boiling water, it'll jump out. But if you put it in water and then gradually turn up the temperature, it'll die before noticing that it's boiling in water. And I think this goes back to a very, 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 very old opinion about Overwatch. One that was definitely unpopular because of the bright future that Overwatch had ahead of itself. But I think it's time to finally bring it back because it should have been listened. And that is that Overwatch should have never been a competitive game. It should have stayed a casual game. And I like to believe that this is very true in the back of Blizzard's head. That when Overwatch 1 started to die, once all the popularity started going away, even before the whole issues with Overwatch 2's development, that maybe, just maybe, Overwatch League and Overwatch Competitive was kind of a mistake. It was a nice little experiment, but at the end of the day, that experiment kind of failed. Not completely, of course, because I think that Overwatch League did help esports, become more of a legitimate thing. But I really do think that it failed to support Overwatch in the way that I think Blizzard wanted it to. And now Overwatch is going in the direction that I think it should have gone all those years ago. And it's regressing to a point where it's a lot more sustainable because that's what it was always meant to be, a casual game. And like I said, it might not be tomorrow, it might not be next year, and it might not be in 2 years, but I do think that Overwatch is going to not completely phase out competitive. I'm sure they'll still support it, but it won't be the main focus anymore. At the moment, sure, they are listening to competitive players and professional players alike, streamers, content creators, but I think this success that they had with Overwatch 2 and all the players that are playing Overwatch 2 has really spoke to them about how, I don't want to say useless, because that's terrible. I don't like being super negative. I'm not trying to do this for any fucking clout or anything. But at the very least, inconsequential a competitive community can be. It puts into question the profitability of a competitive community. Can a game sustain itself with a competitive community? And while I don't have that kind of answer, because I am not going to be the one to make that decision, if you have your own opinions about that, please leave it in the comment section below. I'd like to hear your opinion. I now think that Overwatch, is seeing the success that it could have seen, that now it naturally is going towards a direction of just being a casual game. Because Overwatch is fun as a casual game. Quick play is immensely fun, and people do realize that. It's a free-to-play game AAA experience that is pretty fucking fun when, you're not playing it up the ass like the most serious thing of all time. Finding the most effective metas and stuff. Just No. And all I'm arguing is that maybe that's what it should have been this whole time. And I think that's what the direction that Blizzard wants to go with this for the coming years. And while I don't think that a competitive mode will ever be removed from Overwatch 2, just get prepared to be sitting outside the spotlight. And coming from someone who has played TF2 competitive for the longest time, join the club. But anyways, that's all I have to say about this. What do you think about my opinion? Do you have any kind of take on this whole casual competitive, shift in Overwatch 2's future? Do you think that it actually is going to try to revitalize its competitive aspect? Or do you think that Blizzard is just going to focus on casual because of how profitable it is? Because it is profitable. People are playing this. And from a financial point, it's almost stupid to not, dive deep first into the casualness of a game. Tell me your opinion down in the comment section below. If you found this video interesting, like it if you liked it, dislike it if you disliked it. If you'd like to see more content just like this in the future, make sure to subscribe. And if you'd like to support this channel, I do have a Patreon in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to my fellow patrons. Have a good one, and I'll catch you later.